Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a webinar put on by A4G with FRP. We're going to talk about how to survive and thrive in the economic downturn. So really do appreciate you guys logging on. I appreciate we're in a bit of an awful, what feels like some awful joke Groundhog Day at the moment, doesn't it? So I think we all need a little bit of focus to get through the first quarter of this year. Hopefully you're all not finding it too bad. So I'm Emma White. I'm one of the partners at A4G, and I also head up our sort of cloud accounting and management accounts team here. So we do quite a bit of work with clients on getting things sort of straight and the information to businesses in the right way. And I'm joined this morning by Ben. He's a director at FRP. You know, he does deal with insolvencies, but obviously his preferred part of his job is actually helping distressed businesses get out of the problems and actually sort of turn it around. So he's got some really interesting things to talk to you about this morning. I'm actually going to hand over to Ben now. So he's going to start the presentation for us. So good morning, Ben.
Morning, Emma. Thank you for having me this morning. It's very kind of you to invite me along.
It's all right. Look, thank you for coming on this sunny day. And this isn't your first meeting of the day, is it either? So
no, it's not. It's not. Do you want me to? Do I go and share my screen now? And
yeah, I think if you can share your screens, and we will leave it to you to start the webinar.
Okay. Let's just get this sorted. Let's have a look. Is that working, Emma? Yeah, perfect.
Yep, you're fine.
Okay, good morning, everybody. As I go to say, thanks again, Emma, for inviting me this morning. The part of my webinar this morning is entitled Review, Adapt, Evolve. And it's all about how businesses can take a look at themselves, put through any adaptations that might need to be taken, and then evolve forward to make sure that they can come out of this pandemic on the front foot. So just a quick introduction of who I am. Ben Stanyon, Director at FRP. FRP is a national professional services business with 20 offices around the country, and I run the Sidcup office, which talks and helps businesses in South East London and Kent. So I thought the first thing I would do is just to try and contextualise what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. The next slide is a very simplified curve. It talks about the life cycle of a typical business. Obviously, in real life, there's more peaks and troughs as you go through this, but it's just to sort of illustrate how a business can, you know, it starts up, there's a period of growth, and then some upturn, and you reach this peak where you are at the sort of the top of your commercial performance. And then at some point during that life cycle, you experience a period of downturn. And if that downturn continues, the business can become stressed, distressed, and eventually it can end up becoming insolvent. And obviously, as you fall down that back end of you fall past the peak, business owners as well can become incredibly stressed and distressed. So just before I move on to the next slide, I just wondered if everybody could just take a minute or so, just have a think about where they think their business is on that life cycle. And also, if you're professional advisors, I know there's a few bankers and people like that on here, just think if you've got any clients that you think maybe have slipped over that precipice at the top and are moving down the timeline, or indeed are already somewhere on the right-hand side. And while you're thinking about that, I just wanted to just point, as Emma kindly pointed out, obviously we insolvency practitioners, obviously there's a misconception about what we do. And often people think that we're just down in that bottom right-hand corner dealing with insolvencies. And yes, we do that. But I would say probably more than half of our business is actually dealing with businesses throughout the life cycle. And I've given some examples underneath the curve there of some of the things that we do to businesses at different stages to try and help them. And the key focus of this morning is really to talk to businesses and try and help people so they don't slide too far down that decline curve and end up becoming insolvent, and some tips around how to do that using that review, adapt, evolve methodology. I'm just going to let the next slide load up, and what I'm going to do as part of this is just focusing on that right hand side from the start of the downturn and all the way down to insolvency. And this is what I call like the decline curve. So what I'm trying to depict here is, you can see the decline curve following down the page there, and there's various dots and intervals as you move down it. And what that's trying to illustrate is, depending on where you are on the decline curve, there are a number of options available to you to adapt your business in the event that you start to experience issues. And the key thing here is to point out is, the further down the decline curve you reach, the less options you have available to you. So as an example, at the very top, you start to see you're entering a period of downturn. Could you potentially raise some capital? But further down, when you get towards the bottom, you're really looking at very limited options, maybe a restructuring, a voluntary arrangement, or even an insolvency. And what we like to try and help businesses do is to try and rise up out of that decline curve by utilizing those various potential tools that are available, so that you move into the sort of orange bar, that's sort of the curve going upwards that I've illustrated there. And the key to achieving that is, it's all about early intervention, spotting your problems early and taking the right steps in order to address them before it becomes too late and you limit the options that are available. And there's a lot of ways you can review your business, but this morning I thought that given where we are with the pandemic, especially with the intermittent closures, the furloughing of staff, and a lot of people experiencing, changes to the fundamental changes to their business, I wanted to talk to you about cash, because cash in these sorts of scenarios is absolutely key. So I'm going to talk you through about cash flow forecasting very briefly. I know Emma's going to go into it in a bit more detail with some top tips from their end. And I think the key view here is just, it's all about visibility again. So I've just put a little quote up on the screen there, which is, the earlier clients review, the more options that are available, which in turn increases the ability to deliver a solution. So that's just to reinforce again, it's all about early intervention to prevent you sliding down that decline curve. And I'm going to come back to that decline curve quite a lot in the next few minutes. So just try and keep that in the back of your minds if you don't mind. Okay, so cash flow. So this is the review part of my chat this morning. It's probably going to focus on this in the majority, because clearly, before you can do anything to adapt and evolve your business, you need to understand where you are. And as an insolvency practitioner, I would say majority of businesses that we do meet and see that have fallen right to the bottom of that decline curve, and they're looking at an insolvency, is because of a problem with their cash, whether it be they've run out, or they know they're going to run out, or they've exhausted their resources within the business. So keeping tabs on your cash position and knowing where you're going with your cash is incredibly important. And there's a lot of businesses out there, surprisingly, that still base their performance and their assessment of their own performance based on, their monthly results, or their bank balance at the end of the month, and that doesn't give you any visibility over what it looks like next month, the month after that. So our top tip to businesses in order to properly review your cash position is to prepare a cash flow forecast, and we recommend that businesses do that based on a 13-week cash flow forecast. And the reason for 13 weeks, and that's the first question I'm always asked, is why 13 weeks? So it's actually quite straightforward. 52 weeks in a year, divide that by 4, you get 13 weeks. So it covers off your weekly payments, your monthly payments, and any of your quarterly payments that you may have, such as your VAT or your rent payments, as an example. Some businesses, I appreciate, may have one-off annual payments, and what I recommend, if you do have any instances like that, potentially licenses as an example, insurance if you choose to pay it all in one lump, is make sure that you know when that's going to be coming out, and you can either provision for that in your 13 weeks on a weekly basis, or make sure that as you roll that forward, you know what that key milestone is within your business. But my understanding is they're going to be few and far between. So we always recommend doing the 13 weeks, which is essentially the first quarter looking forward. So as part of that, one of the key questions I also get asked quite a lot is, okay, so I know what my business looks like for the next few weeks, but how do I look forward? How do I go past the next few weeks when the visibility isn't quite as clear? And one of the things I'd recommend there is well, there's two main tips here. Number one, is you can always look back at last year at your historic trends. Now, I understand at the moment, last year may be different to the norm because of the COVID pandemic. So the other way to look at this is to try and involve as many people, senior people in the business in building the cash flow as possible. So get your operations team involved, get the people on the ground that really understand how you are trading from a day to day, and try and get as many important people in the business as you can to take ownership of this cash flow forecast, because it's a very, very powerful tool for the business whilst you're looking forward. And obviously it's something that you'll need to finesse over time, but in order to get a good start to this, is involve as many people as you need to. And the next question, a very good question, is how can I can forecast under normal times. I think I can do this, Ben, but we're in COVID-19. It's very, very difficult to try and predict what is going to come along. And I was going to talk to you about an example of a client I've worked with recently. But before I do that, one of the things I wanted to just mention here is obviously there is uncertainty in business at all times. And sometimes things come along that you don't expect. And what I would recommend that people do is when you're pulling together your 13-week cash flow forecast, that you think you provide for the unexpected. So I had a client last year. He ran a international haulage and removals business. And he called me up and said, "Oh, Ben, I've got a real problem. I think I need to go into administration." And his issue was created, not because of COVID actually, but in this case, it was Operation Stack. And it was all to do with the fact that a lot of his lorries that were going to be going over to Europe were basically grounded in Folkestone and Dover. And what that had was a knock-on effect on his jobs that were supposed to be following after and his logistics. And in the end, his cash position was extremely impacted, and he lost a lot of money. And he was in a position where, you know, his cash position was extremely tight, and he was worried that that was the end for him. And that's a prime example of somebody that had not factored in a line or a provision for the unexpected in his cash flow. And I'll talk to you about him a bit later when we talk about Adapt and how we help that guy to keep his business afloat. And the last question I just thought I'd answer as well is you know, what other steps should we make? So if you prepare your 13-week cash flow forecast and you realise that there is some problems coming down the track, you can spot those problems early. What's one of the best things that you can do as a management team in order to address that? And my view on that is it's very important that stakeholder management is extremely important. So it's whether that be your customers, your suppliers, your lenders, you need to make sure that you communicate effectively with those and you bring them along the journey with you and make them understand the position that you're in. And it's a lot to do with trust. If you decide to say to a supplier, "Look, I'm really sorry, cash flow is a bit tight at the moment, but I will be able to pay you on this date," make sure that you fulfill that promise. And if you've got your 13-week cash flow forecast and it's built on an accurate basis, you can make that promise and deliver on that promise and build that trust. Because unfortunately, especially in times like this, when businesses are in times of struggle, if you lose that trust, it becomes much more difficult to get that back from your supplier. So just moving on now to what I call the adapt phase. This is all about reacting to something that you can foresee in the future. So your 13-week cash flow forecast, it spots a hole coming up or a pinch point or a pressure point for the business. What can you do in order to address that without sliding further and further down the decline curve that I talked about at the beginning? I just wanted to point you to just our website. We've got a number of resources on the website. They're free to use. You can dial on and download and have a read on there. There's 6 at the moment, which are specifically related to COVID-19. You see in the bottom left there is the 13-week cash flow forecast with a bit more detail. There is a template on the website that people can download. It's an Excel template. It's free. You can just go and download that and you can use that as a starting point. And I'm sure our friends at A4G have been more than happy to help you build that out as we would. And there's also some useful information on there around management accounts and also planning past lockdown and some of the things that you might need to be thinking about in that regard. So just want to talk to you about adapt and how businesses can react to adversity. Just going back to my client, the haulage guy, we went along to visit him and did a review of his business for him, and particularly focused on cash, because that was clearly where the issue lied. And what we quickly established was that actually he needed to go through what we called a refinance or restructuring of his existing debt. He had probably a huge fleet of vehicles, most of which had a sort of 10 to 15 year useful life. And what he was doing is when he was buying those vehicles, he was financing them over a very short period of time, like 5 years. And we said to him, well, why are you paying these things off in the shortest space of time possible? Because actually what that's doing is that's putting huge pressure on your cash flow. So what we did is we went away very quickly. This guy only had about a month till he ran out of cash. We went out and we managed to find him a refinance package, which enabled us to stretch out the finance on those vehicles over a longer period of time. And what that did immediately relieved cash. So next month he didn't have to pay these huge repayments on the vehicles. And I'm pleased to say that actually that started him going back out of that decline curve, and he did not enter into any kind of insolvency. But had he rang us 2 weeks later, he would have been in serious trouble. So this little cube that I've got on the screen here is just some of the options that businesses have. And just looking back to that decline curve that I showed you earlier, our corporate finance team is an example. Those guys, if you're right near the top of that decline curve, they might be able to help you raise some capital, value your business. They can help you make a divestment if you've got a part of your business that's underperforming and you want to essentially sell that to release some cash to keep the wider business together. Our debt advisory team, who helps our haulage guy, they can help you raise and refinance existing debt or restructure debt that you've already got. And obviously, if you fall right down the bottom of the decline curve, that's where some of my guys will come in, helping you deal with a restructuring or potentially a voluntary arrangement. So that's about adapt. And I know I'm running short on time, Emma, so I'll canter through the last bit. This is all about evolve. And in terms of building, once you've done your 13-week cash flow, you've adapted your business to react to the problem, and you're starting to come out of that growth pattern. It's all about how do you evolve? What do we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And it's about building medium to long-term plans. And this is something that's quite bespoke to the business, and it's very difficult to me to talk about it generically. But it's all about that look forward even further and trying to have that plan ahead so that you know where you want to go and how you're going to do it. I just want to, just before I finish up, I'm hoping that there's not many people or anyone at all on this call that is experiencing a crisis. But if you are, and we're going to be sending out a more detailed handout after this chat, and in there's going to be some top tips around how to manage a crisis if you're dealing with one. And within there's this, what we call the crisis wheel, the FRP crisis wheel. And as part of that, there are 9 sort of things that as a manager of a business or a business owner, you need to be thinking about or trying to make sure that you're managing if you are experiencing a crisis and how to deal with it. So that was, I'm out of time. So I'm going to pass back to Emma, who's going to give you some really good tips around how to deal with pinch points in the business, some really good ways of assessing your cash flow on a very quick basis, and also talking to you about some of the add-ons to the Xero software that might be useful to your business. So back to you, Emma.
Thanks ever so much, Ben. I think absolutely true. I mean, the things that Ben was talking about, I think people are often quite a bit sort of unsure about certain numbers. And I know, I'm a firm believer in turnover's vanity, profit is vanity, but cash is king. And I think that's a really, really strong message at the moment. I know a lot of businesses think that the numbers are kind of done for us as accountants just to keep us happy, and maybe you use accounting softwares just to keep your sort of fees down and have a bit of a handle on basic bookkeeping. But actually they're much more than that, and I'm hopefully you'll realise today that just how important things are. So I would say, despite the fact that many of you may be doing everything right, there is likely to be a pinch point in the next 12 months, and just because of the factors affecting your business, which you might not be able to control, and that's sometimes other people's cash flow will start having an impact on you. So it's really important as a business owner to know that pinch point, like to know when it's coming, so you've got time to plan, and you know what to worry about. Because I think we're all at home, we've got a little bit more time on our hands. Certainly if you switch on the news, it can be a bit depressing. And sometimes we're worrying about things that we don't need to worry about because they're not affecting us. Like, it might not be affecting our business, but also it's just, I think we can all go off on a bit of a tangent. So sort of understanding your cash flow and knowing when your pinch point is coming just gives you a bit of reassurance that you know what you need to worry about. So we've got, obviously, the furlough scheme was extended. Now what will happen going through sort of past the spring into summer, we don't know, but that could be a point at which you find things are a little bit tricky, particularly depending on what industry you're in. Normally, always for businesses, your corporation tax bill is quite a chunky amount that comes out every year, and that often does sort of just chip away at cash flow a bit. So that's normally quite a big one. Then we've obviously got the personal tax payments that are due at the end of this month. They are going to be spread, if you want, over the next 12 months if you speak to HMRC. But obviously, then you'll be in a 12-month period where not only are you paying off personal tax debt, which really relates to a previous year, you've also got to start saving for some of the tax that will be due next January. And the same with catching up on VAT, or when some of the bank bounce back or CBILS loans start to need repaying and interest starts accruing. So, and they're all the things that you know about. Obviously, you will be trading with people that you've always been able to trust and rely on their business being strong, and depending on sort of how they've managed the last 12 months, that may not be the case. So Ben sort of mentioned how important communication is at the moment. And I can't stress that enough. Like, it is really important to know, even if people aren't paying you, what their situation is. So just having those phone calls, I know they might not be nice phone calls, but hugely important at the minute. So they're all the types of factors that are going to go into affecting your pinch point. So at A4G, we have like a snapshot cash flow tool, just so that we tend to get some of our clients to run it on like a monthly basis, and it'll give you a bit of a cash flow trend, so you know which are your tightest cash flow months. But this just looks at the balances in the bank, what money you've got available in overdrafts or maybe drawdown facilities. So what cash have you got available at the minute? And then we look at some of the bigger bills, so and that often get paid in sort of installments. So we look at the company tax bill. Now, yes, it's hard to predict this year, but we would tend to try and work on finding a prediction, putting it in, and we look at how often do you pay it, but how many months have you got to go? So this is almost how much money in an ideal world should you have set aside for some of these liabilities that are accruing. And this obviously tells this business that actually it should have £86,000 saved. It doesn't. So there's a predicted cash shortfall. Now, that isn't necessarily an immediate problem because some of those things aren't payable yet, but it gives you an indicator that actually in the next few months, depending on when things are due, that should be improving. A lot of businesses do use their tax money as part of their working capital cycle, and that's traditional if you know when you need to have the money back by. So that's quite important. Then we've done quite a bit of work with our clients on streamlining their finances to improve cash flow. So many of you will have seen various online cloud accounting systems, and certainly every business I've spoken to in the last year who's been onboarded as a client of A4G, they are on cloud accounting software. So the one we recommend is Xero, just because of its functionality. Traditionally, a lot of businesses use sort of Sage 50 as a desktop because that had really good functionality. Well, Xero is the cloud version accounting software that has a lot more functionality than some of the other products on the market, and you're able to add industry specific apps and stuff to it. So we like it not just because it's a straight swap for what a desktop version was. We like it because they've evolved it, and it's certainly designed with business owners in mind to have very clear information on when you sign in about sort of cash in, cash out that month. And if you're keeping it up to date, it gives you some useful information. So first thing would be to speed up your invoicing. I know traditionally a lot of businesses sort of might leave invoicing to the end of the month, and then it gets typed up, printed, popped in the post. Certainly a number of businesses will have had to adapt that if you're not able to print and things at the minute, but actually getting your invoices done quickly when work is complete, having it go online where you can track if people have opened it and that they can raise queries directly. You're able to then link payment methods, so it's just really easy. When someone receives your invoice, it's very clear how they can pay you. Some things you can link a pay it now button on, so people can press the button and immediately get onto a system where they can type in their card details or bank details and send you the money immediately. So if you're not doing this already, your competitors will be, and that's where they might have an advantage on you. And then we'd look at sort of automated debt chasing, which might sound off-putting, but actually we work with a bit of software called Fluidly, and that bolts into Xero, and it is a debtor chasing and cash flow forecasting app. Now, the reason I like this is because, you know, they always say with credit control, polite persistence pays. And actually, to have to pay a member of staff to print off statements, put them in envelopes, the cost of stamps, get them out there, sometimes that can mean they're delayed by a week. Whereas using a bit of software like this, you can set it up to automatically send statements, or set a little polite reminder, maybe 3 days before an invoice is due, that would attach a copy of the invoice saying, hello client, just to let you know, this invoice is coming up to be paid in the next 3 days. Hopefully you can add it to your payment run, but if you've got any problems, please talk to us. And that can all be set by you and done automatically. And it can still come from your finance person in the business, but it just means that these things are happening on a consistent routine, and they're not distracted by urgent bits of work, or, you know, maybe someone's working less hours at the moment, so things are running behind. This ensures that we are getting those polite, persistent reminders, and you can schedule that all the way through to, and word it insofar as you know, you might chase a little bit harsher if it's gone past 60 days, but you're just encouraging your clients to talk to you about if they've got problems, and it's just reminding them to make sure that they've got it on their system, because if it's not on their system, it's going to delay your payment. So this bit of software actually then allows you to, if Mr. Jones rings and says, oh, hi, I can't pay on the 30 days as expected, I'll be paying on next Tuesday, you can actually mark it for payment due next Tuesday, and it moves it in your cash flow forecast. It also sets like a to-do list reminder that next Tuesday, just check if Mr. Jones did pay that money. So it's all designed to just make your processes a bit more efficient, so that it can free up the person in the business who's dealing with finance to do the important things you need them to do, to pick up the phone to the clients that need chasing and you need to tie down on when they're going to be able to pay you. And this really demonstrates why I do love Xero, is because it's open source at the back, so it means a lot of people have been able to design things that slot into it to make businesses sort of admin easier. So that's on the sales side. So actually there's also some really good things that you can do on the purchases side, where you can automate sort of data extraction of invoices. You can do your expenses really easily, and you've got the consistency that software gives you, that materials from a certain place will always be put to materials, that type of materials, or postage always goes to postage. It's stuff like that. So there's no misunderstanding about where things should be posted, and advertising doesn't suddenly look high because someone's actually started posting invoices to the wrong category. So we use 2 bits of software. So if you have a multi approval system for purchase invoices, which many businesses do, I certainly think COVID has proved that gone are the days of passing germy bits of paper around the workplace. So no one wants to touch anything now, do they, that it's been touched by one of their colleagues? So Approval Max actually gives you the ability to get the purchase invoice onto a system, and then it get approved via an app by the people that need to see it. And then whoever's uploading the purchase invoice, they could also upload the quote or any other information that your people that might be off-site need to see in order to approve that purchase invoice going onto the system. So that ensures that nothing goes onto your accounting system until it has been checked and approved for payment. Receipt Bank is a purchase invoices capture system. So it means any PDF invoices you're getting or invoices on email, they can be sent automatically to an email address that will then allow you to get it onto Xero. So it will publish it in Xero with a PDF copy of that invoice. So you don't have to keep more, which is fantastic. You might be looking at cutting down your office space. We can help you cut down on the amount of space you need for your finance paperwork. And that can go on there, and you can also do expenses on there. But one of the things they're building is they're working with a lot of suppliers so that you could link your supplier account to Receipt Bank and it will automatically fetch the invoices for you. So again, brilliant. You're not having to mess about with printing invoices, approving them. And it's all in your account system. If you're at home and you suddenly think, oh, materials seems to have been shooting up, you can go into Xero, click on materials for December, run through all the invoices. You can see hard copies of the invoices without moving, without having to get big files out and copy invoices for you to see. So all of it just improves the efficiency of running a business. And a lot of clients are using these now, and it does give you a bit of an advantage. So as I said, I've probably been banging the drum about keeping finance records and management accounts up to date for 20 odd years now, and certainly it is times like this that just prove how important knowing your numbers is. So again, the reason I love some of these softwares is actually not for my purpose. It gives you the ability to, if you're keeping your system up to date, to stress test some of the things that you do outside software. Now that might be how you build your costing for whatever you're doing. So 5 years ago you might have said, right, materials cost this, labour's this, my margin should be this is how I cost. But actually very few businesses that I talk to tend to really use the information in their accounting system to stress test that costing. And it's often, you can have some quite frustrating conversations when it comes to year end, where people say to me, I definitely made more money than that, because they haven't been looking during the year, and things, prices sneak up, or maybe it is with coronavirus that labour has become less efficient because you're not able to travel together, and you're having to use different methods, and there's more social distancing. But whatever it is, but it gives you, using your accounting system to stress test some of those things, gives you a really, really good trust in the tools you're using to drive the business forward. But these cloud accounting systems, they've got really, really easily editable formats, and some great reports already built in. And what I love is the 3-way reporting of profit. So you can look at profit for the overall business. You can also look at the sales per salesman, maybe. You can also look at per activity. So it might be that you deal with big projects. Well, you can actually separate the profit on projects by using tracking categories. So it just means that as a business owner, you can really drill down into where should I be focusing my attention, what's making all the money, you know, maybe what do I need to do more of. It might be that you need a conversation with Ben about, actually, I need to separate my business and I need to drop one area of the business that hasn't been profitable for a long time. But it also gives you month-on-month reporting. You can look at actual to budget, so you can put your budgets in there. So even on, and you know, if you know that you think you should be making a gross profit margin of a certain percentage, we can put that in there as a budget, and then you can track your month by month how you're doing compared. There's also a report I really enjoy, and it's something that we always build for our clients in Xero. It's called the prior year report. Now, obviously, that tells you this January compared to last January. And at the moment, you know, being able to sense check on last month plus this time, like this month compared to last year, that is how you'll get some of the information Ben was talking about being able to forecast. You can get a sense for, you know, just how badly affected your sales have been temporarily, or even how much your sales have increased. So what should you be looking to do next? You know, have you got the capacity to deal with maybe the growth you're experiencing now? Some businesses are growing, so they've seized an opportunity, and they happen to be fortunate to be in an industry that is unaffected. So, you know, all this information is in the system if you know how to look at it properly, and that's definitely part of the job that I play with clients, is just making sure that the account system is giving them the information they need to run their businesses better. So in terms of what you should be doing to planning, you really need to understand the business's cash flow patterns. Historical information can give you an idea for the future. You know, if December was always bad previously, it might have been worse this year. You need to know your cash position now. You really need to look at streamlining and keeping your finances up to date, because it will identify areas that need your attention. And there's some great, you know, if you're using an accounting system on the cloud, there's some fantastic forecasting tools that allow you to easily forecast different scenarios. So it might be that you've recognised that there has been a 20% drop. Well, okay, we can use a tool and we can forecast those scenarios, and we can also forecast what's going to happen on the back of, you know, going out of this. So you've got a bit of a range to work with. And I think that's the thing at the moment. It's a bit of an unknown. But actually, if you know your numbers, you might not have as much to worry about as you think. So as I said, Xero has hundreds and thousands of apps, and a number of them are industry specific that bolt into them, which just makes your whole customer service so much better, and it gives you a little bit more information that you might need to really be at the forefront of your industry. So as I said, how we help a lot of clients set this stuff up, or probably what we've been doing more so now is helping people get the right information out of the system. They might have been set it up by an old accountant or a friend, or just set it up themselves, and they've done the best they can, but actually it's not giving them what they want. We also have our 5-minute cash flow tool that's available from our website that we can give you, that just gives you a snapshot on a month-to-month basis. And as Ben said, he's got available his 13-week cash flow tool. That will be, the link will be provided at the end of the webinar. But we can also sort of do a detailed cash flow for up to 12 months. I mean, you can forecast further into the future, but at the moment, certainly I'd be looking at the next 12 months is the sort of important point. We can work on report design with you. We sometimes undertake exercises which we call scoping documents for clients. Now that might be where you've cut hours of members of staff, or you need to make your finances more efficient, or as a business you're struggling to find the right people, so you just need to streamline processes, and we would sit with you and work out what the business does, sort of all the areas of that are maybe slightly inefficient from a document production or a finance point of view, and we'd put together like a plan with you on how you might integrate some of this stuff. And then we've got our breakthrough program, which is more a mentoring program for businesses, where we will help them through this process of cash flow forecasting, monthly management accounts, highlighting areas that we think we need to discuss with them, maybe holding them accountable to some of the targets they're setting, and deal with any of the challenges that they've got in terms of maybe sales and marketing or staff development, any of those things really. So that's one of the things we've been working hard on to support businesses. So thanks ever so much for your time this morning. I hope you found some really useful information here and given you a bit to think about really, where you can really sort of strengthen your business in the next 12 months. So do we have any questions in the question and answers? Ben, I think if you unmute yourself, we could probably tackle these together. So thanks everyone. I mean, Ben, there's probably an interesting question for both of us about what we see for businesses in the next 12 months. Like, what do we envisage the problems to be? I know I touched on my concern being the people you're trading with might be causing your biggest problem, and that's the unseen problems, isn't it? They're the hidden issues really, and a lot of businesses will have been given credit that they might not have been afforded under normal circumstances. So I don't know about you, Ben. What do you think?
I mean, there's a lot of things going on out there, which I think is going to build up a bit of a delay, and there's a lot of businesses that are limping along, unfortunately, at the moment. Obviously, the government's rolled up, the corporation tax and the VAT, and that's all going to become due probably early next year. And I think the revenue will give people their time to pay, 12 months time to pay. But when you add that into sort of starting to repay your government lending, maybe having to start paying your landlords again that you probably might not have paid for 9 months because they haven't been able to affect that, but you've got 9 months of rent arrears. There's a lot of businesses out there, unfortunately, that I think are going to have substantial debts that they're going to need to try and tackle. And obviously we're seeing the start of businesses struggling, especially in the retail sector. We're dealing with Debenhams and Peacocks and some of the larger retailers, and it normally starts in the retail and then it works its way into other sectors. And you're right, Emma, some of the suppliers into the businesses on here today may be affected, have a knock-on effect from others, and then it becomes a bit of a snowball effect and it affects wider businesses. So as I say, it's about trying to have that sort of have that robustness in the business, and information in that regard is key, and having that visibility, that look forward, and that provision for the unexpected, to keep businesses heads above water, essentially.
Fantastic. And actually, another one of the questions that's been raised is, should I have a rainy day fund for my business? Which I always think is quite an interesting point. I mean, it's lovely if you can have that. And sometimes too much of a rainy day fund might suggest that there's better things you could be doing with your cash. Could you be investing in new technology or diversifying the business, or there's different things to be done, aren't there, if there's cash? But I think it probably makes business owners sleep a bit better at night if there is a little bit of a cash reserve. And it's hard being a business owner, and particularly if you are the one person responsible for sort of all the decisions in that business. It's certainly a hard place to be at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that, just going back to the chap who I sort of talked about in my webinar, with the haulage business, one of the things he did to sort of evolve his business and make sure that he didn't get back in the situation he was in before was that he started to put some money away, or hold, either build in some provisions into his forecast, or just have some money set aside to deal with the unexpected. Because unfortunately things do happen, right? And Operation Stack for him was the real killer. For COVID, it may be COVID this time, but inevitably there are issues. Things change, and if the business has got that resilience and it's got some money set aside and it's able to afford to do that, then I'd always recommend it. But obviously it's got to be in balance with other things that are going on. And you're right, there's no point. I guess there's no point in spending it all on improving your technology if something goes wrong and you can't afford then to react. But at the same time, you've got to move the business forward. So it's basically getting the balance right, and having that visibility and having a good handle of your cash is key to making all of these decisions. Information is power.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think know your numbers is the message, isn't it, this morning? We've had someone ask about the purchases app. So is on purchases, our apps part of HubDoc? So HubDoc is a purchase processing app, which is part of Xero. That's been developed. So Receipt Bank has been around for a while and probably has a little bit more functionality, but not every business necessarily needs that. So HubDoc is within Xero and is designed to do exactly that, improve the processing of purchase invoices just to speed that up. So, okay, this is an interesting one. What's more important, cash or profit?
Do you want me to go first on that?
I'll let you go first. Yeah.
To be honest, I think it depends where you are on the sort of life cycle curve that I pulled up. Obviously, if you're in the decline curve, when cash becomes more prevalent to the business, then there's no point in doing a deal where you're going to make 40% margin, but it might take you 3 months to get paid because you need cash more urgently. So you've got to this is all about getting the balance right. And depending on your situation, cash, it can be completely king. But if you can get the balance right and get a really nice margin and get the cash in early, then that's the best of both worlds. And I know I work with quite a lot of businesses that have got some high margin products, but with long payment expectations from their customers, and a lot of them go to asset-based lenders, and they discount those invoices, get paid earlier once they deliver the product, and that helps them with their cash flow, but also make sure that they can still maintain that profit. So it's about getting the right. If you do need to go out there as a businessman and try and you've got to get the right products into your business to make sure you maximize your cash, but also maintain as much of that margin as you can.
Absolutely. I suppose for me, I would probably say that some people come to you telling you they've got a cash flow problem, and actually when you look at the numbers, it's actually a profit problem. The business hasn't been generating enough profit to support the owners, and then so cash has been dwindling. So it's really important to actually have a conversation, isn't it, and identify, is it a cash flow problem? Because there are tools out there to solve that more easily than if it's a profit problem. So if it's a profit problem, there's a lot more work to be done, and that needs to happen quicker to try and turn that and I'm not saying it's necessarily a loss, but it might be less profit than they need to support the business owners. So cash is often a problem people come to us to talk about, and actually it's a profit problem. And that's one of the things that we can help businesses identify, is what is the underlying issue of the cash problem. Fantastic. Okay, so I don't know if anyone else has got any more questions. We've got a couple more to cover, but if you've got anything you're thinking of, just pop it in the Q&A. So we've got a question about, I'm behind on my accounts, where do I start? I don't know about you, but it probably depends on how far behind you are. I mean, I've been working with a couple of businesses recently who they've got in a real muddle. So we've been onboarding them as clients of A4G, and actually it's a historic problem that's gone over years, where they've used a bit of software, the accountants turned it into a set of accounts that are probably maybe 80% right, just to get them submitted, but then hasn't fixed the problems in the accounting system, and that goes on and on. I mean, you probably see this, Ben. And sometimes we need to find a point where we draw a line and start getting it right going forward, and that might mean a new account system, or certainly just getting to a point where you know which invoices haven't been paid. So it might be that you just need to do an exercise where you go back over the last few months of invoices, see if they've been paid. Any of the older stuff you could always move to a suspense account temporarily, but you've got to get to a position where you know what you need to chase as a business. I think that's the thing, isn't it? If you owe someone money, they will scream at you loud enough, but if a customer owes you money and they're not chasing, it depends how honest they are, but they might not tell you that they owe you money if you're not asking for it. So it's always focus on your sales and what money you've got owed to you first. But that's, you know, we would put together a bit of a plan with businesses on how we tackle each of these things and a bit of a timeline. So
one thing I would say is that yes, you need to get your history right, okay, and you need to try and get your accounts sorted out to focus on some of those things that Emma's mentioned there, you know, in terms of your debtors and your creditors, etc. But actually, not having your past right doesn't prevent you from looking forward, because you know, a cash flow forecast is all about the future, and it doesn't really, you know, you say where are we now and where are we going. So you can still sort of do both in parallel and look forward, as well as trying to go, you know, get your back office sorted. Although, you know, some of the things that will be key to that forecast is knowing, you know, your cash coming in and knowing what your debtors looks like. And obviously, if you've got to catch up on payments, you need to know who those people are. So it's a bit of a combination, but it doesn't prevent you from looking forward and starting that process of trying to look, you know, 2-3 months ahead and plan your cash on that basis.
Absolutely. I'd say it's probably more critical to look forward. And like you say, you can have a plan on fixing what's behind you, but only if it's, you know, needs that work done because the business is viable. It's much more important to look at the now and then look at the future, and have a conversation with someone who can help you make some strategic decisions on that, rather than spending a lot of money maybe getting your accounts up to date when actually you didn't need to spend that money just yet. Okay, fantastic. I don't know if we've got any more questions.
So one on stock management, Emma.
Yeah, actually a really good question on whether we should be focusing on stock management, as so much cash kind of ends up stuck in stock. Certainly a lot of businesses, I don't know about you, Ben, but I know a lot of my clients were quite smart in the first lockdown and did make sure that they then stockpiled stock as it became back available to enable them to be able to continue trading, because that would have been something that would have had a big impact now. It certainly would have caught up with them. And I know some of the businesses that have stockpiled stock and actually supply products to other people, they are picking up a lot of business at the moment because other competitors of theirs haven't been able to get the stock. So there's actually some really good tools, aren't there, for sort of financing stock. But it definitely is something that you should be looking at your stock regularly. And seeing what's there, and also making sure it is a realistic valuation. I mean, I'm sure you see it, Ben, quite a lot, where stock is valued at X, but actually when you look at the obsolete stuff and start chopping it out, it's...
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, a lot of businesses we've worked with in the past, they've got poor stock management and they end up getting themselves into trouble because, for a number of reasons. A, they're not recognizing the fact that they've got slow moving products on their shelves, and they're tying up capital in those. And actually, if it's not moving, maybe you need to, you know, recognize what that product is, discount it, get it out of the door, and don't buy it again. And also, a lot of businesses I've worked with, they've just got no grip on the dates they've got until to sell it. So a lot of, you know, I've had businesses where the stock's just wasting because, frankly, you know, they didn't realize it was about to go out of date. And if they'd have realised, they've, you know, with a month ahead, right, this is going out of date in a month, we need to get this out the door and massively discount it, get something back for it. Whereas they just let it lapse, and unfortunately, you're just throwing it in the skip, which is a complete and utter waste of money. So, you know, stock management is absolutely critical if you're a business that deals in a lot of, you know, moving products, and trying to have some systems in place that sort of tell you things like use by dates and trends, selling trends and all that sort of stuff, because you've got to replenish the good stuff, but you've got to also try and get rid of the bad stuff if it's not shifting. So yeah, I you know, all of that flows to cash, right? So the more information you've got on that, the better.
Absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? You just need to be able to control the controllables and know where the value is on your balance sheet as well, and if that's realistic.
I agree with you. Controlling the controllable is all you can do, absolutely. And then if you can plan for the unexpected at the same time, then you're in the best of both worlds.
Fantastic. And I think we've covered all the questions. I don't know if anyone else has got any quick questions. There's actually, Nick has put a good statement from the bank in a question and answer. I don't know whether you can copy that into the chat for everyone to see, or if everyone can see. That's he was just talking about, you know, that obviously funding and restructuring, how important the forecasts are.
I think it's worth mentioning as well that, you know, there are, the government has extended some of their help programs, like the CBILS as an example. If you didn't take your CBILS or all of your CBILS, you can still go. I think you've still got a bit of time left to go and get that additional funding. And there's lots of things out there where people, there are still help tools out there. But I guess the point is, at some point that will run out, and then you've got to work out how you're going to pay it back. There's no point in going to borrow money now if there's a possibility you're going to have issues repaying it. And it's about having that visibility to make sure if you do borrow it, what that repayment plan looks like, and making sure you can afford it, and whether it's worthwhile on that basis. But there's we're both here to help businesses to try and make those decisions, and people like Nick are here to lend you the money if you do think it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. Well, we're getting near to time. So what I'll do is, there haven't been any other questions come up. So we will be circulating, sort of recording the presentation and some slides and the links to some of the tools we've talked about. But do feel free to reach out to us. And we're happy to help, aren't we? I think for us, we're just keen to see as many businesses survive and thrive through 2021 as possible. So, all right. Thanks ever so much for your time this morning, guys. And thanks, Ben, for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.